Tucked away in a quaint little corner in Indiana, small Midwest state, just south of South Bend, home to Notre Dame, the quaint little town, a good town. As a matter of fact, that's their motto. When you drive into their little town with two, I repeat, two stoplights. It says Bremen, a good town. Another little addendum they used to have on the entry sign was, visit our library. Sound like a sleepy old throwback town, tired, small, quaint, sweet, but unnoticeable. Yeah, all those things are true. Is it indeed a two-stoplight town, or is that just sort of rhetoric to make it sound more backwards? No, it truly only has two lights. But I know of this small town because one thing it did produce out of that little tiny pocket of northwestern Indiana was me. That's the town I was born. And I remember even growing up there as a young boy, the things that I saw and the little things that I would see, not knowing where I would end up or how my life would go. We never do. I guarantee you when I sat there as a small boy around the train tracks, I never thought one day I'd have my own podcast. Because podcasts didn't exist. Pods did. P-pods. We had to shuck them. That's what we did. And casts, when we casted our line to try to get our food so we didn't die that day. All those two words existed, but not podcast. No, that's something brand new. But it's something we're doing today on a Monday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. God's comic Brad Stine and his son Wyatt Leroy Stine are going to push some buttons, babble away, and see if perhaps we can inspire, entertain, and maybe, just a tiny bit, give you a little inspiration and change the world for the good, just an inch, an iota. Maybe not. But we're here trying, which is more than I can say for those of you who aren't. If you'd like a perfect introduction to let us know the podcast is launched, why, I can't think of a better way than the rhythm and the beauty of music that God gave the human race. As a matter of fact, I've got my own little tune that lets you know history's about to be made again. Brad Stine Has Issues is here, and this is my song. Oh, welcome. That is me, God's comic Brad Stine. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, and this is where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. It's a one-of-a-kind show, unlike any ever to exist on Earth, and I'm just trying desperately to see if I can enlarge my screen, which I've done, but I don't see anybody commenting whatsoever, and I hate that because, it's because I was looking at another one. You're not going to believe this, Wyatt. I pulled up the podcast like you tell me to every week, and it ended up being the Zelda shirt episode, which was last week, where, in fact, the new episode, which is Venice Beach Freak Show, another shirt that I bought years ago, is the highlight. So I'm excited to be here with you, son. It's good to have you with me and joining me in this crazy little cast we call pod. How are you, son? Wyatt Stine, you exuded from my loins, and yet you're autonomous, so I'm going to let you answer. How you doing, son?
Well, today, this week has been, oh boy.
An old boy week?
Do I have some stories for you?
Oh, my goodness. Now, if you're brand new to the Brad Stine Has Issues podcast, here's what happens. In the beginning, I talked to my son. His name is Wyatt. He's on the other side of the screen. You'll never see him. We don't want him to be seen. He's frightened. He's very agoraphobic. And the last thing he wants anybody to do is look at him. and his freakness. But he's here, and we banter. There'll be some fun, some laughs. Perhaps we'll talk about things. Perhaps we'll find something inspirational, something deep, something scary to talk about. Who knows? And then we'll get to our special guest who we'll be interviewing. So Wyatt also, believe it or not, this podcast isn't paying well. I mean, it's paying, Wyatt, but I'd say not well.
It's not nothing. It's more than what you get, at least.
Look at you suck it up so you can keep your pittance that I throw your way. The shekels I toss your way.
Yeah, but why do you keep giving me shekels? We use dollars here. Nobody accepts them.
Shekels is the Romans' version of Bitcoin.
Wait. Romans invented cryptocurrency?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
Nah, you know what? Surprisingly, I don't remember hearing that in my Roman history class.
Yeah, they invented cryptocurrency, and so when they had their royalty and they would knight someone, they'd call them a crypto knight.
I don't get it.
Okay, well, anyways, I wanted...
Actually, better question, do you get it? Because I feel like you just strung words together without actually knowing what they meant.
Have you ever heard of the word kryptonite?
You mean the fictional thing that has nothing to do with knights, cryptocurrency, crypto, internet?
Wyatt, this is our podcast where we make crap up and hope somebody laughs every now and again.
Yeah, but
Kryptonite happens to be the most famous superhero's history weak spot.
Yeah, I understand that, but what does that have to do with cryptocurrency?
I don't know.
What does kryptonite have to do with making money?
You said, did they invent cryptocurrency? I said yes, and then in the royalty, when they would knight somebody, they'd kryptonite.
Okay.
So I was it was a pun.
At that point, we're talking about something completely different.
Let me tell you something we're going to talk about completely different. I'll bet you, and I'm not looking, but I'll bet you there's some people online who are saying hi to us. Now, what I normally like to do is jump in and say hi back. And let's see if I can,
I don't know. Should we see who's first? Because we still have the issue of my shirt that needs to be addressed.
What?
My shirt that you were wearing again.
Venice Beach Freak Show?
For some reason, do not have a wardrobe interesting enough for this podcast.
Well, I don't have a Venice Beach Freak Show. Now, you know...
And whose fault was that?
What?
It was your fault.
What's my fault?
For not having that shirt and having to take mine.
But I paid for it.
Exactly. You could have paid for two and gotten one yourself.
Good job. Listen, here's the thing. I don't know if you know this or not. But I've always been very fascinated by freak shows. Did I ever talk to you about that?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Well, not on the podcast, but you have talked to me personally about it.
Yeah. And do you know why I was interested in freak shows?
Honestly, I don't think we've over-explained that, but I just know you've been into them.
Yeah. Well, because I grew up in my...
Right. Our cousins are like carnies.
They're carnies.
Yeah.
They're in the carnival. So I grew up seeing them and watching this carny life that they lived. And I even went out on the road with them when I was about 18 years old with my uncle, just for a little bit of a carny initiation. I went out actually before that with my dad in '74, and we went out together and did a little bit of experimenting ourselves. And so I've done it a few times. I got a little carny blood in me. And but they would have freak shows there or side shows, and I just found them fascinating. So I'd go in and I'd watch the sideshow guy. And I remember one guy would he was a human blockhead, so he would pound nails into his nose, into his head, and then he'd take needles, big old needles, and he would hold his socks up and he'd push the needles through his flesh and in his sock to hold the sock from dropping down. And so he would push needles into his arm and pop it out the other side. Just fun, guys. Fun.
Yeah.
Fun at parties. Yeah.
Didn't like one of our ancestors invent the basketball hoop carnival game too?
The hoop game where you shoot the hoop into
total scam, like all carnival games. Do you mean that we come from a line of con artists? That explains a lot.
I wouldn't say a line of them, but listen, here's the thing you got to understand about the carnival, son. Nobody in the carnival is saying everything's on the square. Nobody says that.
Fair enough.
We all know that part of the fun is that they're trying to make it a little bit more difficult.
You know what? Part of the fun is that everything you see was put together in like 5 minutes with like Elmer's glue and like a nail gun. So it's not really expected to be quality.
Right. But nevertheless, they were involved in that, and my uncle invented the one where you try to get the basketball hoops in, and then you win the plush.
So like, did he invent the actual trick to make it more difficult, or did he invent?
You mean
making the rim tighter than usual?
Yeah, he did.
Or
that.
did he invent the idea that basketball should be in a carnival?
Both.
But really, no one until then thought to take popular sport and popular pastime and popularize them together?
I don't know how or what caused this scenario to take place, but that's family lore. And but he played basketball growing up, so maybe he found that to be an intriguing thing. I don't know.
That just makes me think about like some of the other famous carnival attractions. Like, who invented the guess your weight game? Like, who in the right mind decided, you know what the next big thing is? Scales.
I can guarantee you one thing about this guy. He wasn't married.
if he was, not for long.
Not for long, because nobody's going to want to guess their weight.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you have a new idea, you got to test it first to make sure it works. And if you're married, well, who do you have you can test it with?
Right. Wyatt?
Doesn't really go over well.
Wyatt.
Yeah.
You know who Jeff Hearn is?
Jeff Hearn?
Jeff Hearn.
The name sounds familiar.
I never heard of him. But guess what? Okay. He's from Nashport, Ohio, and he said, howdy. Dusty Wilhelm's here. Of course, Nick Crest just lurks at the top and just says he's watching you. I don't know how he even pulls that one off. Rebecca Daly Dwyer, hello from Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, with all the accoutrements, the unicorn, the purple heart, and the shattered heart. Hall of Fame Marie Rauchi, we have one stoplight, and I was just at the library. Play the theme, please. What? We have one stoplight, and I was just at the library. I don't know what that means.
I think it means that he was at the library and there was one stop.
She's not at Bremen Library. Hall of Fame Marie Rauchi, are you in Bremen, Indiana? You let me know. Aaron Oak says, here we go. Force Bainey. Ooh.
Okay, so I'm looking at the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if this is... I literally can't tell if this commenter has one name or four.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the entire name.
Yeah.
Ray Band, Rainbow's Ghost, that everybody hates.
Nice, I like that.
It's literally comma separated. So
I like it.
I wonder if it's like 4 different YouTube channels that have just banded together for this.
I don't know, but that's a great name. Hey, Tinsel Sizemore, the dryer broke at the laundromat. Michael Quackenbush, push some buttons by. Mike's in now. The Quackenbush is in full bore.
We have the approval of Quackenbush.
Yes. Force said to have a great show this evening. How would we not? You know, Gail Gamble, hello, White and Brad. Great to hear and see you all again. Carrie Hathaway, happy last Monday in September. T.W. Smith, don't know him. Howdy, Brad and Wyatt. No, he's been around. Aaron Oakes, we're here, nothing but I love. Ashley Haas, Lowe's story. Ha ha! Ashley anticipating the Lowe's story, Whitey.
Oh, I've got a good one for you this time.
Hey, Howard Cahoon said, awesome pun, as opposed to you, who should be most appreciative of my puns.
Look, a pun has to have a setup. You can't just say something. Look, you can't just create a portmanteau and say that's a pun. Those are 2 different things.
I kind of did, though. Aaron Oak says, laughing here in Wyoming. Carrie Tudor's watching. Wayne Hunter, he don't get it. That's right. Michael Seiferlein. Hi, Brad. Hi, Michael. Don't know if he's a regular. Karen finally showed up with a bunch of scary, frightening, laughing, tear-jerking faces. Carrie Tudor, no notification, but find you, Kinsman, Ohio. Heather, she is. Sean Syriac shows up, of course. Mm-hmm. And let's see, Carrie Tudor, love you in Jesus, but you'll like Freak Show because you thought you Freak Show, but now more Jesus Freak. Okay.
So this person with like 4 different names has commented again to clarify that it is actually for canceled YouTube channel. I'm so sorry for that.
Why did they cancel his channel? That's hysterical.
Maybe because it was too hard to pronounce.
Well, you know what? Here's what I was going to say, though, about Bremen. I opened up the show talking about Bremen, Indiana. I used to go to, are you ready for this, Wyatt? I went to the drugstore. I think it was, I'm trying to think of Summey's. Was it Summey's? Something like that, I think. But we go to the grocery, and you could buy candy, Wyatt. Now, this is going to make me sound like I live in 1934, and obviously I'm not that. You could buy candy for a penny.
Yeah.
You could get a penny candy.
Yeah. We literally, in our studio, have a gumball machine that accepts pennies.
No, but so you could. But I could get. Have you ever had like licorice or red vines? You know what I mean.
Yeah.
You could buy them for a penny.
Okay.
A penny of licorice. And guess what else? One thing we used to, they had a soda stand, believe it or not. This is the 60s, so it's not that old, but only. And one thing I loved to get was they had a jar, and you pull it up, and you pulled out one of these.
The pretzel sticks.
They had pretzel, which I remember from my childhood. So when I saw those in the public, I said, I got to get these. I love these types of pretzels. I like them better than the prayer folded dead hands. I like it better than the tiny sticks. I like it better than why this is the only way to enjoy a pretzel.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. You know, I've actually heard a lot about those old-timey drugstore, like, candy shops. Especially,
do tell, Wyatt. Do tell.
Especially the people that run the soda machines. I heard that they are notorious jerks.
Well,
that's how you pun. Lesson for you.
Your setup was so laborious and so forced. You were so desperate to get your pun out.
Listen,
that it was embarrassing.
At least I had a setup that matched the joke at the end. You went from cryptocurrency to fictional superhero weakness, like those are two things that ever deserve to go together.
Oh, I see. So there was no connection to cryptocurrency and kryptonite.
There is. It's all no. What is it then? Name and decision.
Because if you buy into it, it will destroy you. It will be your weakness.
Wait. Hold on. Are you saying if you bite into kryptonite, cryptocurrency is your weakness, or if you bite into cryptocurrency, kryptonite's your weakness?
No, buy in. Buy in.
Oh, buy in. Wait, if you buy into kryptonite...
My Lord, folks, did you hear what I have to deal with? I gave him this pun. He panicked, created this crazy pun, wanted to get great glory for it, then tried to re-break down mine, couldn't hear what I was saying.
No,
Why?
Even when you correctly list it, it still makes no sense.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you know? Now you work Lowe's part-time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know it's a job, and I got to say this before we go further. It's a job, and I'm grateful you have that job, and I'm grateful that I have nothing against Mr. Lowe's. Is he still with us?
Yeah. Actually, unfortunately, he's moved on.
He did.
To Home Depot.
Huh?
Yeah.
So Mr. Lowe's built Home Depot too?
Well, I mean, his full name was Mr. Lowe's Depot.
Okay.
So.
Well, anyways, you have given us and regaled us with wonderful stories of your time.
I wouldn't call them wonderful, but they are definitely stories.
Well, they're hysterical, though. Now, for those of you who are new to the podcast, one of the stories was that Wyatt told us about the fact that they decided to start having birthday parties at Lowe's, and they shut an aisle down. Actually, they don't let you just wander around. So you're reaching over a kid, grabbing a mallet while he's trying to build a birdhouse. And then he told me the next thing, they said this was such a hit that they came up with date night, where you can take a date to Lowe's and build the birdhouse. So apparently the slam dunk is the birdhouse. Just take any festivity, any kind of gathering of humans, and add a birdhouse, and you have a Lowe's excursion. So Wyatt, you said you had some interesting stories to have to talk about. So is it just an addendum to what we've already talked about, or Wyatt, do you have something that can add?
In my opinion, it is the grand finale. the pièce de résistance
All right.
of the Lowe's saga.
Okay, let's hear it.
First of all, I regret to inform us all they have officially retired the Lowe's birthday party.
What?
I know.
You never even got to be the plank.
I know. It's a
Why did they
tragedy.
retire?
Oh,
That.
that's a funny question, actually, and you're gonna love the answer. It was too popular.
What does that mean?
Exactly what it sounds like. It was literally so popular, we didn't have enough people to do them. We would have basically had to create an entire department of like probably 3 or 4 people, just like working full time, just to keep up with it.
Did it make you money?
Yes, but it ultimately we're already working on a skeleton crew, so they couldn't afford. I'm dead serious. Everything I speak the truth.
No, Wyatt, I'm sure you do. I'm just saying.
Anyway, so
Here's this struggling company, and they finally come up with something that works, and then they can't afford to hire people to continue it on. It just sounds like it's. I'm not anti-Lowe's. I mean, I think they have nice product and whatever, but man, their internal management seems to be struggling to keep the ship afloat. But then you told us about
So
the date night, and is that still? Hopefully, please God, tell me that's still happening.
I think that's gone too. But here's the thing. Yesterday, I am walking at Lowe's at like 7 o'clock at night. And as I walk, I notice like 12 to 20 like high school kids in like tuxes and dresses just crowding together. And so I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to ask, but I had to know. So I asked one,
Why?
what's the occasion? And you know what he told me?
If you tell me that Lowe's is now doing prom night.
Lowe's homecoming. Yes. Apparently they've been doing this every year for years now.
Do they dance to the sound of
I hope
of a saw violin?
to be perfectly honest with you, I heard that and then just slowly backed away.
Of course. Okay, so are you saying they do it on the same night as homecoming, or they just create another homecoming
I think it's the
for those
same
who?
night as homecoming.
So kids come here first.
I think instead of is my theory. You can't make this stuff up, can you? You really can't.
All right, they got rid of birthdays, which was working because they couldn't afford. Got rid of the dates, and then they brought back something. So how are they going to have the personnel to run that?
Well, here's the thing. It's a one-day thing.
Okay.
So it's fine. Now, remember when I told you I had a Lowe story?
Yeah.
That wasn't it. That happened yesterday.
The homecoming?
The homecoming happened yesterday.
Okay.
So I wasn't prepared for that. Genuinely, that shocked me.
Okay.
What I was prepared for was, well, instead of talking to you about it, I have a short little clip.
Oh, okay.
Now, I set it up so that it's going to be playing on the screen, but you're still going to be on the screen.
Oh, okay. I see them both.
Yeah, I want to see your genuine first-time reaction. It's only like a minute long.
Okay.
So, are you ready?
Let her rip, son.
Are you sure you're ready? Okay.
How can
all
it?
right.
What
Here
can
we
be
go.
worse than homecoming?
Well, you're about to find out.
They say the people you work with often feel like family.
Oh, thanks, Taryn. An employee at the Lowe's in Warren takes on a whole new meaning for her. Laren Hito is a native of Iraq, and with her family still in the Middle East, she and her fiancé had plans to get married over at the courthouse. But after hearing the news, her co-workers got to work on planning a wedding and decided the store would make the perfect venue. Merchandise from the home improvement store helped set the perfect scene and make the newlyweds' special day a dream come true.
He looked at me, he said, "What do you want?" I said, "I wish I could get married at Lowe's." And he looked at me, goes like, "Girl, let me see what I can do. Give me 1 week." And that's it.
I was just awestruck how beautiful and how everything came together and how wonderful it looked. And like I said, I had not seen her, so seeing the dress and, you know, everything, I completely forgot I was at Lowe's.
From all of us at Fox 2, congratulations to the happy couple.
Lowe's wedding is a thing. Yeah.
Have they ever considered... You know what they need now?
Lowe's funeral?
Lowe's funerals,
Build your
where
own
you
casket?
actually build your own casket, get in it, and then kill yourself.
It's the only thing that they can
Oh, smoke. Lowe's, stick to hardware.
do. We don't even do that, but we have a single aisle in the entire store for hardware.
What's the rest?
Not everything but hardware. We've got like furniture, like light bulbs, paint. Oh, by the way, this took place during store hours in the paint department. They announced it over the intercom.
At your Lowe's?
Thank goodness no.
Oh,
But I think it was at the Lowe's in Michigan. But
okay.
it did happen.
Now, had they done it at your Lowe's last night, all the young men in Texas could have been his groomsmen.
I don't want to talk about
Okay,
this.
well, anyway, listen, I find that to be a wonderful story. I'm glad you've been waiting to play that clip and shock me.
2 weeks. I've been sitting on that clip for 2 weeks.
That's amazing.
I'm waiting for the ultimate opportunity.
That's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. Well, folks, I got to tell you something. I was reminiscing, like I said earlier, about my pretzel, but it does remind me of life and how it goes on, and it begins to get older, and things begin to sort of, you just start getting more clarity as you get a little bit older. Why? You start realizing you aren't going to be around forever, and it becomes so much more true, so much more real. I mean, this little town of Indiana, Bremen, Indiana, I was telling you guys about, it's grown. It's grown a lot since when I was there, but it still has just the 2 stoplights, the little library there, and you know, it's a nice little town, close to South Bend. If you're a Notre Dame fan, it's perfect because you can get there in 30 minutes. You know, it makes me wonder about, you know, what are we hanging on to down here? You know, I was going through some books today that have been stuff I've kept for a long time, and it was in the bookcase because I love information. I'm an autodidact, so everything is self-study. That's how I do it. I love information. I just love information. So I have all these books. So I'm starting to finally be able to release these things. Go, I'm never going to read that. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to revisit that. And so it's really kind of an understanding that, you know, really, what are you doing on Earth? You know, what are you here for? And are you getting to it? I guess what I'm saying. Are you getting to it? You know, the more we look around at our nation, the more we realize the stakes that are at play here. We are losing our freedoms, especially in the universities and academia, which is then spilling over into the corporate boardrooms. I never saw that happening, so that's going to destroy your freedom to buy, sell, without someone limiting that based on your worldview and them deciding against it. So it's Marxist. It's the left, which is always communist death. Always, always, always. But they've taught our children, our teenagers who go to college, to embrace the communist cult of cancer because they think it's fairness. They're so stupid. You know, I did a routine, I don't think it, I think we aired it. I was talking about the idea of stupid. Stupid sounds like just an insult. You're just saying you're stupid as though you are a bad human or you are an imbecile. Doesn't mean that. It means you're uneducated or you are able to grasp ideas. So if you can't, it's literally what stupid means. So the only way it'd be an insult is if you could grasp ideas and concepts and somebody called you that anyways. But all these youth that are falling for this nonsense that America was racist and that the Civil War was you know, had nothing to do with, you know, keeping the Union together and ending slavery, and this whole idea that that slavery is what we were fighting for at the Revolutionary War. Just pure lies, pure lies. I don't think you can use the word pure lies. I think you should use impure lies, because pure at least has a nice connotation to it. But they're falling for everything, and these kids now, they're taking it to such existential step that kids who have gone through puberty throughout human history have always struggled with that. It's difficult. You have all these chemicals running through your body, and estrogen and testosterone, and so you are dealing with this, and you're shifting from a child to an adult, and you're getting, zits, and you're everything's changing on your body, and you're getting lanky, and you're getting, everything is just awkward, and you're kind of getting an adult body, but you're not really adult maturity level. So that's always been a difficult thing to navigate. Well, now that's being leveraged into say, well, why don't you do this? If you feel uncomfortable or as a woman, let's mutilate your body forever, and then you can become a new Prometheus, a new Frankenstein. And if you've ever seen a picture of the surgery that is done to these young women, it's like a war crime. It's like it's like something Goebbels would have done. It's just so evil and butchery and Frankensteins out of these children who just are too dumb and stupid because they're too young, so they don't know how to navigate, and the adults aren't walking them through it, and they don't know. And then one day they'll wake up and go, "What have I done?" And they're freaks. They're gone. They'll be an eternal hospital patient, needing medication at all times, probably incontinent, never have children. They have literally become monsters. And it is so heartbreaking to me because, those of us who care about them and say, we don't want this to happen, we're not going to let it happen, at least till 21. At 21, you want to butcher yourself, you're an adult, have at it. Unfortunately, it'll still be a misery, but that's your call, not children. And we're called transphobic. Well, I am phobic. If that means irrational fear, then I'm not, I guess I wouldn't be phobic, because it's not an irrational fear, it's a true fear. If you butcher and mutilate children, I think you're an evil, despicable human being. If you're a doctor, I think you should have your license revoked, you should be tried for malpractice, and you should be put in prison. And now that these transitioners and detransitioners are beginning to sue, we're going to start seeing doctors paying the ultimate price, and then they'll stop doing surgery, and that'll be that. Meanwhile, we've got all these mutants walking around for the rest of their life with this thing, going to their parents going, "Why didn't you help me?" And the parents were told, if you don't do this, your kid's going to kill themselves. So the parents didn't know what to do. They were freaking out, and they weren't given any help whatsoever. So the parents are going to be accused of something that they thought they were doing the right thing, because that's what the medical community told them to do. And of course they did that because they wanted the money. But my point is this, I grew up in this little town, and it was simple. It was simple. And we had little pretzel rods that we can get, and I could get a root beer float, and I could buy liquor. And again, I know I sound like I'm from the, Depression era, but I'm not. This is in the 60s, but you could go buy, if you had a dime, you could get 10 pieces of licorice, or you could get a piece of gum and a this and a that. Obviously, you'll never see those days again. But it matters to me that we fight, as I've always told you guys, for freedom. We fight for the ability to maintain who we are and where we've come and where we're going. The only way you can do that is to be free to speak. As a comedian, many people tune on to see me because I'm a comedian. They see my comedy and they think it's funny and they want to watch, and they think, hey, I enjoy your type of comedy. Well, the only way I can do my type of comedy is if A, I can use any word I want, B, I can use any topic I want, and C, I can do anything and say anything I want. Now, if you know my show, I don't curse, I don't do sexual jokes, I'm not graphic like many of the other secular comics are out there, mainstream comics. But nevertheless, I want the option, and even the topics I talk about from the right are told to be verboten, like transgender or personal pronouns, this and that, which is material that I am now using in my comedy for this next album that I'm working on right now. Now, I'm going to be in Michigan this week performing a fundraiser for a pro-life pregnancy resource center, and then a comedy night. But this is why free speech is so important to comics, because we're not even able to do our job anymore, because laughter means you break taboos. It means you step on toes. It means you expose the uncomfortable things. That's what it means. And so I just am just so adamant about being able to speak freely at all times. It means so much, because those who have risked life and limb to become actual naturalized citizens of the United States that left these oppressive places, they're telling us you don't ever not want to be able to think and speak. And, we know now that there are people in this country now that are afraid to give their political views. They'll get fired. This is what it means to have lost liberty, to lost the republic. It's gone if you aren't able to do it. Now, what I believe is if the people rise up and start speaking what they want and then sue these people they try to sue, and we can help you get lawyers to do that, then perhaps we can balance the ship. If you want to be part of the free speech movement and help me do this and Wyatt, but also just go out and do these live events, and I got some other things coming up, maybe a movie hopefully, I've shot the movie, but hopefully it's going to come out this Christmas. You can join the Militia of the Mind. Militia of the Mind is simply a donation of $3 a month, so $36 for a year. But it's a way of putting some skin in the game. If you're going to participate in free speech, if you're going to participate in fighting for our freedoms, you got to pay a little bit. You got to give a little bit. You got to sacrifice a little bit. You got to risk a little bit. And so that's the only reason we're doing that. But it's hopefully allowing us to then be able to add more things, add different clips, add other sketch type shows. These are things that take a lot of money and time. So these are things that can only come if people give. Now, there's two ways you can give. One, you can just simply give to the Militia of the Mind. Go to bradstine.com. It'll say sign up. You just put your name, your email, $36, you're in. That also makes you part of the mighty 10,000. I wanted the first 10,000 people that identify as Americans, in other words, old school Americans. They believe in a sovereignty, in a border that's locked down. They believe in states' rights. They believe in limited government. They believe in absolute free speech, absolute Second Amendment defense of that. That's American. And if that's who you are, I don't care if you can speak my language or not. As long as you have joined us in that regard as an e pluribus unum, join us in the Militia of the Mind and the mighty 10,000. We're almost have the shirts ready. I'm going to wear my shirt as soon as I get one so you can see it. And I'll tell you then how you guys can begin to go out and get them and wear them, as I told you we do from the very beginning. But this is really, what I'm about. Now, if you want to just give in general, let's say you don't want to join the Militia, or maybe you have, and you just want to help the rest of the things that are happening, the rent that comes with paying for this and that. You can also just say, I want to just donate to your ministry. It is a 501c3, so because it is a nonprofit, so you can get a tax break, and we're getting to the end of the year, so you can either give the money to the government, who will subsidize abortions, or you can give it to people who are trying to stop those types of things and speak truth at all times. So either way, we'll put a clip down there if you want to just donate in general, and if you want to become Militia of the Mind, then that's how you go to bradstine.com and do that. But the reason I was bringing this up is because I have a very interesting guest. Now, I've had lots of wonderful guests on. We got a lot of good. I've already got some in the can for the next sessions of guests coming up. So there's some new, fresh voices. But this particular person is unique in that I believe they are only the third comedian I've had. Now, people must think, why don't you have comedians all the time? You're a comedian. Don't you know comedians? I do. I didn't want to talk to comedians because I am a comedian. I don't want to talk to people that aren't comedians because that's what I'm interested in, and I'm hoping it's what you're interested in. But I've had Victoria Jackson on, who's a former Saturday Night Live person. I'll probably bring her back on again because I don't think she was ever here with me live. Maybe she was. I don't remember it. But if it was, it would have been an early session of Stine Has Issues when you could barely see it and then you couldn't hear anybody. But then I had Jim Brewer on, another former Saturday Night Live comedian who's now doing a lot of conservative type stuff. This next comedian is also a conservative comedian, but you never heard of him because he's from the United Kingdom. He's actually Persian. He was born, he's Iranian, but he was born in Italy, so he speaks Italian. But he got canceled in the UK performing stand-up comedy. And it's much, much worse in the UK than it is here in the United States. And he, very smart guy. But I saw him interviewed by Konstantin Kristen, and on his Trigonometry podcast, very interesting. And the first time I'd heard of him, and I watched his clips, and I saw what he was doing, I said, okay, I got to talk to him. I got to talk to a fellow comic who's fought the good fight, who's actually faced consequences of being a conservative in a place where they don't let you get away with that. And we will have a wonderful clip of some of the material he's done, and you're going to love this guy. He really is bold and wonderful, very clever with his conservative stuff, talking about abortion, talking about pro-life. It's amazing what he did. So I wanted to give him a platform, and I wanted you to see him, but also just to see the state of what it's like in Europe and free speech and the lack thereof, because all that stuff is going to try to infiltrate and become the standard for the United States, and we got to stop it. Now, I'm going to do my best. You can do it too. You have to do it in your neighborhood. You got to do it across the fence to your friends, your neighbors, at your workplace. You have to stand for truth. You have to have the courage to say, I'm going to do this, what I believe, and you don't have the right or the privilege to steal from me my dissent of your point of view. And anything like that simply makes you a literal fascist. You call me that, but you actually are, and I'm going to expose it. Folks, it is the time of our lives. And so as I think of this little town that I came from and where I've ended up, and not knowing that perhaps this little boy would grow up to be somebody that was trying to fight for the freedoms to have other little boys grow up in this country and little girls be safe, be free to speak and to think and to dream. That's why we're here. That's what Stine Has Issues is all about. So I want you guys to enjoy this interview with a fellow comedian. You will see a clip of some of his material, which you're going to like. And just see what's happening with free speech and what it means to those of us whose entire life is based on words. Well, folks, buckle up. You're going to enjoy this, but it's important, it's informative, and I'm sure it will enlighten you in a very special way. So please welcome my guest, Nicholas De Santo. So those of you who watch Stine Has Issues and are familiar with my podcast know that I rarely have comedians, which is odd because I'm a comedian. So why wouldn't a comedian have on a comedian? And the truth is because I get comedy. I do comedy. I'm actually more interested in heart surgeons. But nevertheless, I don't not want comedians on. I just want to be very specific in who I bring on and why I do. As a matter of fact, up to this point, I think I've only had two. Both of them happen to be Saturday Night Live veterans, Victoria Jackson and Jim Brewer. But they both also have something in common. Their point of view is very specific. They're funny, but it has a very conservative bent. And that's of interest to me because, of course, that was the road that I paved 20-something years ago when I began to come out on stage and say I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian. You're just going to have to deal with it, and let's see if there's an audience. And off we go. But as I begin to continue to watch different folks that I really appreciate listening to, their philosophy, their point of view, especially in the world that has gone nuts in the U.S. and around the world, but much of this crazy crap has come out of the U.S. for some reason, so I have to hold us accountable. I get to see a lot of people out there in the atmosphere that are really doing something interesting, and I wouldn't have known about them if it wasn't for the internet. So thank God for that. But anyways, that being said, this particular person that is about to come on with me is a comedian. stand-up comic. Now, I wasn't familiar with him at first because he's in England. He's in the UK. So I don't know a lot of those comics, though. Most comics in the UK, at least historically, I've loved. Huge fan of Monty Python and Ricky Gervais and other guys. There's a much more, I think, depth and sophistication oftentimes in comedy that comes out of the UK. But stand-up isn't necessarily what they're known for. So that's what we're going to discuss today. This particular guy actually saw on Trigonometry, and that's when I first heard about him and when I began to watch what he was up to, and then saw some clips, which you're going to get a chance to see here in a moment. I was going, okay, this guy I got to talk to. So we're going to bring him on right now, and as you know, I'm a techno idiot, so I'm going to see if I push the right button, and if suddenly we're speaking to somebody in Yugoslavia, you'll know why. But please welcome with me Nicholas De Santos. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey, Brad. How are you? Very well.
Doing...
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm very, very excited to have you on. I loved what you're doing, and I loved really your perspective, your point of view, and frankly, I think a much more courageous point of view, because you're doing it in a place that truly is losing its way when it comes to free speech. So I thought we'd just kind of jump right in to that whole idea. So you kind of began to get and make a name for yourself because of being canceled, or at least being put in a position where you were persona non gratis for some reason in the culture that you're trying to do stand-up comedy. So I wonder if you could just quickly give a bit of a background as to your stand-up career, your point of view, and what it was specifically you did that began to put you in the public eye internationally.
Thanks for the invitation. Yes, I'm not in Yugoslavia for now, so you got
Okay.
to the
Perfect.
you came to the right person. I'm in Washington D.C. actually. Forgive me if my voice is a bit husky and I occasionally cough. The American aircon is a bit too strong for me.
Amen.
I know it's one of the symbols of the American superpower and might, but I'm getting acclimatized to it.
Yes. We're very devious.
I-
We're very devious over here. You never know what type of gases that are integrated into your room as we speak. The CIA probably is monitoring us as we speak.
Yeah, I would believe you, because nowadays, not to go off a tangent, but so many conspiracy theories have proven to be true that
Yes.
I would believe anything at this point.
No kidding.
Yeah, my name is Nicholas De Santo. As you said, I'm based in London, England, United Kingdom. I'm originally from Italy. I was born in Italy. I started stand-up as a side hobby or a little side job about 5 years ago. I wasn't very prolific because obviously I had a job as well, the day job, and then COVID happened. But so everything went into hibernation, as you are aware, I'm sure. But of course, I am a conservative or right-wing comic, and that very early started to get me into trouble. As you may imagine, London metropolitan area is very much a liberal, heavy territory, just like New York or other big cities in the US. The comedy circuit is no exception because, of course, lefties dominate all aspects of our mainstream culture, not just Hollywood, not just filmmaking, not just universities and art, but also stand-up comedy. So it was already hard to find gigs and not to get canceled once you get on stage after some gigs. So that was one issue. The other issue was that I was a journalist with a mainstream media outlet, that is the BBC World Service. And of course, my comedy did not sit well with my employers either. So they started getting tip-offs from presumably anonymous people, which might have been as well my colleagues posing as anonymous concerned citizens. Now, mind you, I was not a public figure because the argument was that, you are jeopardizing the good old name of the impartial BBC, because apparently the BBC and mainstream media are impartial. I don't know if you've noticed that, but They are very impartial, and they were impartial towards Brexit, towards Trump, towards mass immigration, towards Christianity. They're always impartial, but I was jeopardizing them, their good old impartial name, by telling some jokes in some pub basement up and down London. But that was the rationale. You know, in Italy we say you apply the law to your enemies and you interpret it for your friends.
Wow.
So if you
Can you
go
say
on
that in Italian?
yeah, we say la legge ai nemici si applica, per gli amici si interpreta.
See, much better in the native tongue. A good friend of mine, and I don't want to get you off track, but a good friend of mine who immigrated to the United States, his name is Jonathan Cigliafaro, and he's an opera singer from Italy, and has been very successful. So I'm used to, well, you don't even have an Italian accent, so I don't know I don't know what exactly, or it doesn't sound as Italian as his. But anyways, so I love listening to the Italian speak Italian because it's a beautiful language. But anyway, so go ahead and
Thanks very
continue.
much.
Yeah.
So basically my point is, if you go on any of these mainstream media personalities, doesn't matter whether it's the BBC or CNN or MSNBC, and you just look at their Twitter feed, you see where they come from, you see where their positions are, but these views are tolerated and somehow not deemed to be undermining the so-called impartiality of these outlets. But I was an anonymous journalist, not even broadcasting to the English-speaking public because I was with the World Service. But anyway, long story short, they gave me a final written warning after a series of, disciplinary procedures. So I came to a point where I realized I couldn't stay there anymore and do stand-up comedy. So now I just work freelance, and we have a new television channel which is sort of conservative leaning. It's called GB News. Some critics have branded it the Fox News of the UK. I mean, sometimes intending this as an insult or a disparaging comment, rarely as a compliment, but the so-called Fox News of the UK, according to some quarters. It's called GB News. I'm a commentator on that channel now. We have a TV show called Headliners, which is a press review, but with a comic or comedic twist.
Nice.
And that's why I think comedy is so important, because it's one of the last trenches of free speech, because you still have the comedic license, if you like, that you say, look, my duty is to push boundaries, and I'm doing it. Not that comedy, as I mentioned, has been exempt from the cancel culture, but still, compared to some other arenas, you still have an opportunity to say things, to push boundaries, to do satire, to speak truth to the power within the realms of comedy. So that's what I do.
Yeah, well, I've said on numerous occasions that, historically, the comics were the court jesters who could mock the king and not get their head cut off because they could bring the royalty and the peasantry into equality. Supposedly, that's what it was, what its design must have been, because it was part of the culture of monarchy, was to have a jester, was to have humor. There was something about it. And of course, humor is always mocked and satirized human life and culture. That's kind of all. What else is it going to talk about but the human condition and the way things are? So it's a necessary component of a flourishing free culture, is this idea to find the funny in places that other people not only can't but feel isn't even conducive to the funny. And that's the art of beautiful comedy. That's the art of it. If I can make you laugh at something that seems to be verboten topic, that's my art. That's what I can do that you can't. That's what a comic can do. We have a sense of humor, not used as a term to simply define the fact that we're funny or make people laugh, but we have a heightened sense of what is funny. It's something given to us by God that allows us to sort of interpret the world in this way. You come from Italy. This is not quite off Well, it's a little off topic, but in a way it's not. It'll swing around in here a moment. I don't know if this is getting too personal, but you guys are the home of, Rome, of course, and a very ancient, rich history and heritage, especially in the arts. But you also gave us Mussolini. So what I am curious about is, is one of the most bandied about terms or monikers placed upon people when they want to shut up the right is fascist. You hear it all the time. Well, you're a fascist. You're a fascist. Of course, Mussolini would fit that category. So I'm curious, because you have a very unique perspective and obviously an intelligent guy. Let's start with the definition of terms. That way we can actually have a conversation with these folks. What do you think a fascist is?
Who do I think a fascist is?
Yeah, what do you think that means by fascist? What is the definition to you? What do you think it means? If somebody says someone's a fascist, what do you think that means?
Well, there is an actual definition, there is a strict meaning for the term, but as you suggested, fascism or fascist has become a catch-all sort of slur that the left today uses very creatively or very flexibly to stigmatize anyone they don't agree with. So fascism as an ideology, as you mentioned, started in Italy. It was an ideology which is essentially a way of seeing the world and trying to find problems, find solutions to the problems you have. And this was 1920s, roughly speaking, in Italy. Mussolini was the one behind this, who went on to become the leader of the fascist Italy. Essentially, fascism has different aspects. For example, central government, very strong central government. It has a socialist component to it, because it is believed that it's the government who needs to, direct the society in a certain way, also provide justice, some level of fairness, protection. By the way, I don't know if it comes off as controversial or anything, but a lot of good things were also done by fascism. For example, a social security system, a pension system. They did a lot of improvement in terms of, there were some marshy territories, like I'm not sure what the English term is, but they basically transformed those areas, those lands, into more habitable, hospitable territories. A lot of infrastructure, because of course Italy was a new country. The modern state of Italy was founded in 1861, so less than 2 centuries ago. There was a lot of poverty. It was the last and the least of great powers, trying to rub shoulder to shoulder with the likes of France, the German Empire of that time, of course Britain, and the US was not a major power at that time. Russia was. So this was fascist Italy, and of course there is a very strong patriotic or nationalistic, militaristic element to it as well, which is also to some extent understandable, because again, Italy had just been united. When Mussolini came to power, Italy was less than a century old, only a few decades old. Most of its territories had been under occupation by the Spanish Empire, by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They were trying to unite the people. People in north and south of Italy could not even understand each other because they spoke different dialects. The Italian language was an elite language, but not spoken by the majority of the people who were illiterate. So this nation-building process, if you like, was very important. So it is a bit funny if you look at people who call lefties who call their opponents fascist so easily and quickly, because, for example, as I said, the central government and the economy is very strong in fascism, or in a fascist state. and the economy is essentially controlled by the. It's sort of a government corporatism, if you like. I think that's the term Ben Shapiro uses. So the government decides, there is a private sector, but the government decides who does what sectors are more strategic, what sectors are more important. So if you look at a lot of people on the right today, they want small government, they want smaller or lower taxes, they want the right to bear arms, at least in the US. They want freedom of expression. These are not elements that we find in fascism, and therefore these people cannot be fascists. The only commonality is maybe the love of your country or emphasis on the protection of your borders, your land, family as the nucleus and as the cornerstone of the society. Yes, there are some elements, but you can't just simply call anyone who is a conservative or who is leaning towards the right a fascist, because that is inaccurate.
Yes. Well, and it just didn't ever make sense to me, because, I mean, if you take the sort of the central substructure, like you said, that control of the leader and sort of a very specific government central planning socialist kind of perspective, what's different than a despot, a totalitarian? That's kind of what all of this is pure power by a self-elected elite who put themselves in a position of control. So I always just find it sort of interesting that they use that word against right-leaners when talk about lack of self-awareness. I mean, as you said when we started our conversation, the left, and I always differentiate, I got this from Dennis Prager, between the left and liberals. I used to, when I started my comedy career, and began to be more conservative leaning as a presuppositional worldview, I would say the liberals this and liberal that. And over time, I've learned, at least now, I'll take the liberals all day long. Give me back the liberals, the classic liberals, because they let me talk. They let me have a conversation. We could examine information and concepts together and try to reach a conclusion. And if we didn't, we did it civilly. That's gone. Because leftism has no tolerance for any dissent whatsoever, period. It's as evil as it gets, because it's all Marxist driven. So I just was curious, about your perspective, because you're a smart guy. Matter of fact, before we get deeper into the comedy elements, so tell me, you said you're in D.C. You have this other job. I mean, what is it exactly your bio is, as far as what you used to do before you did the comedy, or maybe still do?
By the way, I before answering your question, just adding on to what we were just saying, the irony is that a lot of fascist or fascistic traits, we find them today in the way lefties behave, because they are the ones who want to cancel you as soon as you express an opinion to the contrary of what they believe. They are the ones who mob you, who campaign for people to lose their livelihoods. They are the ones who follow the government blindly. Yes, more lockdowns, please. We need to get vaccinated because the government said so. Talk about fascism. That is fascism, because that's textbook fascism. Like, the government decides what is good for you and what is not, and the government decides that, okay, today we must support Ukraine, and you don't question it, and the government says that today we must shut down all businesses, you sit at home and receive government handouts. Maybe some level of heavy government, strong government was justified in 1920s Italy or 1930s Germany because of the chaos and because of the Soviet Union or the communism at the door, and because people dying of cholera or other diseases. So you needed a strong man to come and build you roads and bridges and give some sort of order and security to the nation. That is far less necessary nowadays, and yet these guys are all about bigger government and tuning into the television to see if I'm supposed to wear a mask or not, or if I can get out of my house or not. So I put it to you, who is fascist here? But to get back to your question, yes, as I said, I was a journalist. My father was originally from Iran. That's why, although I was born in Italy because he was a diplomat, and that's why I speak that exotic language. And I'm also familiar with the Middle East. I worked at the BBC World Service for that department covering
As
the
a
Middle East.
journalist?
Yes, as a journalist and producer, and that's why a lot of my comedy also, you know, takes inspiration or has material coming from, you know, news and current affairs and history, and that's why. So yes, as a freelance TV producer journalist, which is sort of my day job. I'm here in DC because I'm working with this company that covers the UN General Assembly going on this week in New York, although the bureau is in Washington, D.C. But this has also been a good opportunity for me to try the Washington, D.C. comedy scene, or to try to, you know, get some stage time here.
Yeah.
Not very easy because I'm new and it's not exactly the most favorable environment to a conservative comic, but I'm gonna give it a go. So it's fun working with the under the aircon at full blast in the morning, and then trying the comedy scene in the evenings.
Well, I give you credit for that because, like you said, DC unfortunately is horribly left, and I'm sure the folks that go there, if they're from that area, are left leaning. I actually reached out to Jim Brewer. I don't know if you know who he is. He was a former SNL comic. If you remember Saturday Night Live or ever saw it over there, I don't know.
Yes, of
course. But so I'm sure you're familiar with some of those folks. But anyways, he was one of those guys, and he's really kind of leaned right now and conservative and doing stand-up from that regard. So I even reached out to him and said if he knew anybody in DC that could help you out, because I don't do a lot of clubs anymore. I just kind of found my own niche and my own fan base, you know, which
Brad, I'm trying to sign up to some of these open mics, and I've had at least 3 examples so far. There's a sign-up sheet, there's a sign-up, you know, form that you need to obviously fill out to see if you get a spot. And you read things like, comedy is inherently about pushing boundaries. However, please don't make anyone uncomfortable in the audience. Tick agree. No jokes based on people's race, gender, sexual orientation, nothing. However, remember, always punch up. So who is that? Basically, always punch up, but don't make anyone uncomfortable means go after white dudes.
Of
right?
course.
Go after all that's left is US white conservative.
Yeah. No, well, but I didn't know that they were doing that in the club in DC, though. That wouldn't shock me. I mean, you know, a lot of the clubs that I did back in the day were more Midwest, southern part of the U.S., which was more conservative. So that wouldn't have ever been kind of in their wheelhouse, even though that might be more of what's happening. It just makes me sick when I see that. And that's what I want to fight against. I think that what is most telling about what you just described is in the way that they define themselves through the way that they speak to you online, the left. Because if you show a clip of your comedy and then there's a thread of people that will comment about it, I'd say one of the top phrases I'll hear from people who don't like what I do is it always starts with, this guy's not even funny. And then they go off and talk about A, B, C, and D. And I'm like going, so you're watching a clip in front of 1,000 people who are laughing, and you've deemed me not funny. I said, so if you want to at least be if you want to at least deal with logic and reason and not some sort of ad hominem attack, but actually do with reality, simply say this. I don't think this guy's funny. Okay, that's art. I don't care if you think I'm funny. As a matter of fact, if everybody thought I was funny, I wouldn't be saying anything worth listening to. Because comedy that has some bite to it, that has some depth to it, that has something to say, should make you uncomfortable in some place, in some point, because that's where it can be done at the highest levels. To me, look, man, there's great comics that are uncontroversial. Brian Regan and Seinfeld and Jim Gaffigan. I'm trying to think. Nate Bargatze's another guy that's really started hitting huge. Wonderful guy, non-controversial, fun for everybody. God bless him. I can't do that. I just have things I have to talk about, and it puts me in a different category in jeopardy potentially for people not liking what I do. But the idea that one would make a declarative statement, "You're not funny," is clearly untrue, because they're laughing. You don't think I'm funny, and the reason you don't think I'm funny is because you're a leftist, and leftism is systemic narcissism. You literally cannot laugh at yourself because you're a child. You think like a child. You can't take a joke, you can't take satire, and there is no punching up to you because because you're up. You know, we talked about fascism earlier, and it's like, listen, if you control the dissemination of information through all the social media, if you control, in the U.S. I'm speaking of, this is my territory I'm defending, if you control the police, the largest police force in the U.S., the FBI, if you control the CIA, if you control the IRS, if you control the CDC, if you control all of the aspects of my ability to interact culturally in a free society, you're a fascist. You literally are what the Second Amendment was created for, was the time when the government is no longer governing, but is controlling. That's what it was created for. And it's hated by every other European nation. What it is about Europe and despising the fact that we have a clause that allows us to defend ourselves with guns, I think should be self-evident in what happened to Australia, to New Zealand, certainly to Canada, as far as what happens when the government takes control. But listen, I don't want to get this like so heavy that people want to hang themselves by the time we're finished with our interview. So we'll find a balance here. So let me take you back to your comedy. So, folks, before I go further here with this conversation with Nicholas, I'm going to show you a clip of him. Now, normally what you would do in this particular case is you'd show a clip that was a minute, 2 minutes. I'm not doing that. I'm going to show you about 10 minutes of this guy because he's really funny. And but most importantly, he's smart. I love smart, sophisticated comedy. I love comedy that really reveals the reality of a particular perspective, exposes it, and then finds the funny so it doesn't just become an attack or a derision, but in fact finds humor in its inconsistency and its hypocrisy, or in its lack of self-awareness, which nobody is less self-aware than the systemic narcissist known as the left. So, Wyatt, if you would, I want you to show clips, and you guys enjoy yourself. Trust me, you're going to love some of this comedy clips, and you're going to want to get more of it. So, Wyatt, if you would, go ahead and play this clip of Nicholas De Santo. I've added an S to your name when I introduce you. My apologies, De Santo. And enjoy this, and then we'll come back and talk to the guy that thought of all this stuff all by himself. Go ahead.
Nicholas De Santo!
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. You guys have kids? Yeah? You see, people say the day my child was born was the most beautiful, the most exciting day of my life. These people have clearly never been released from an Iranian prison. Am I right? Seriously. Yeah, slogans, huh? I know, I love kids. I've got two lovely kids and a wife. My wife is Austrian and vegetarian, so it's good to be here. It's good to be anywhere but home. Listen, guys, I feel there's a good vibe in this room. I feel the warmth. I feel safe, so I'm going to say something, and I don't care who hears this. I'm just going to say it, okay? I'm going to say it. Nazis were bad. There you go. I said it. It's out there. I can't take it back, can I? Nazis were bad, and they did horrible things. And one of the worst things they did was getting rid of the so-called unwanted, defective people, people who would have been a burden or deemed as a burden on the society, including unborn babies. I will be doing some jokes later. Don't worry about that. So all my life I've been told that it was wrong, it was bad to get rid of unborn babies because they would have been a burden on the German Reich and its aspirations of world supremacy. But nowadays we are being told that it's good to get rid of unborn babies because they would be a burden on Karen from accounting and her aspirations of getting a promotion. I mean, I don't get that. If anything, Nazis made a better case. Bear with me on this one. Bear with me. The Nazis would go to this unborn baby, you got to die. But why? I tell you why. Because all German-speaking folk must be reunited in one single ancestral fatherland. That's why. Because the Versailles Treaty was a travesty. You don't know much about the Versailles Treaty, do you? We lost Danzig. We lost Danzig. Our territorial integrity has been interrupted. There are Germans now living under Poland, under Czechoslovakia. There are Germans living under Mussolini. Well, we kind of like Mussolini, but that's not the point. Das ist nicht der Punkt. We need to make this wrong right, and we cannot sustain the war effort if we were to take care of the likes of you. So you got to die, unless you can become a German soldier who can also speak English, because according to all future World War II movies, the Wehrmacht personnel talked English to each other. Otherwise, you got to die. Now, fast forward to our time, you tell the unborn baby, you got to die. Why? I tell you why. Because your mom needs to continue to do after-work drinks and Peloton. Do you know how much Peloton subscription costs? Because your mom is a junior events manager with Thompson & Thompson. She wants to become a senior events manager with Thompson & Thompson. What the hell is an events manager anyway? At least the Nazis had a clear, defined goal based on solid geopolitical principles. Our land is flat. We are sandwiched between Russia and France. We need to take them out. Some of you are sitting here thinking, the Nazis did make a lot of sense. This is going seriously better than it did at University of Southampton campus. Where were you when I needed you? Yeah. A lot of women killing their babies for their careers. Can you imagine killing your baby for your career and still be paid 30% less than a man? Can you imagine that? I mean, you can only imagine that because gender pay gap is a myth. It has been debunked time and time again. But can you imagine that? We can only imagine that. Yeah, so in the US, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and that was a serious blow to casual dating and casual sex. But it was a major victory for babies who want to live. So, you know, glass half full. And it was a major victory for Catholic biology. Do you guys know Catholic biology? I was born in Italy. I went to Catholic school. You know, according to progressive biology, they say my body, my choice, because according to progressive biology, a woman, at some points in her life, she has a second beating heart, an extra pair of kidneys, 4 extra limbs. But according to Catholic biology, a woman throughout her life has only one brain, one heart, and so forth. So, in other words, if you are a woman and you ever find a second beating heart in your body, it's not your body. And if you're a man and you ever find a second beating heart in your body, it's not your body. Also, you are not a man. So yeah, the U.S., you know, it's a big problem for casual sex, because in these blue states, a lot of single women are angry. They're like, oh, are you telling me that tonight when I go clubbing, I need to find somebody who could potentially step up to the situation and take care of me and the baby if the baby comes up? Are you telling me that tonight when I go clubbing, before I open my legs for this total stranger, I need to first ascertain that he is responsible and kind? Thank you very much, Supreme Court. Thanks for nothing. So in America, Disney Corporation, nobody said this was going to be easy, guys. Disney Corporation is paying travel expenses for its employees so they can travel to blue states and get an abortion. I mean, Disney produces content for children, and now they're subsidizing the killing of children? I mean, it doesn't make sense. You're killing your own future customers. It's like Central London declaring war on Russian oligarchs. It makes no sense. So Disney, in a statement, Disney said, we are doing this because we understand women's reproductive rights. What we don't understand is irony. But now, in America, Planned Parenthood, they're coming with mobile abortion clinics. They're using these RV wagons, turning them into mobile abortion clinics, driving close to the borders of the red states, trying to lure pregnant women to these clinics. I mean, that is some serious commitment, isn't it? Right? These people must really, really love killing black babies. Because they're all black. Mostly, every second black baby in America is aborted. Did you know that? I mean, you can try. Wrong laugh, but... Okay. You can try not to laugh, but you cannot not learn. Yeah. I mean, even the Nazis were not like that. They didn't come up with, their iconic Volkswagen camper vans driving close to the Swiss border with their mobile gas chambers, trying to tempt the Swiss to give up their Jews. The Nazis had principles. We haven't the principle. If we conquer the land fair and square, we exterminate. Otherwise, we don't just drive and... They didn't do that. But by the way, what sort of messed up, cynical name is it? Planned Parenthood. Because there's no planning and there's no parenthood. Yeah, I'm planning to become a parent. Okay, let's start with killing your baby. By the time you leave the clinic, there is no parenthood. It's like I am planning my visit to Australia and I start by shredding my tickets to Australia. Doesn't make sense. But it's all about catchy names and marketing, right? Planned Parenthood sounds catchy. You have something similar concept in this country. You call it equity release. Equity release, it's like Americans are more honest about it. They call it reverse mortgage. It's when you sell your house back to the bank so you can go on cruise holidays. It's like, what do you call it? Who doesn't like equity? Who doesn't like release? Huh? It's a terrible concept. It's like, hey, the bank comes to, hey, have you got a house in Southeast England? Okay, good for you. Do you know your children will never have a house and their only chance of ever getting a house is this house? All right, do you have a dark sense of humor? Yeah, you're a baby boomer. Yeah, your grandfathers fought the war. Your parents rebuilt the country and then you came right in the middle of the economic boom, hence boomer, right? Bought your house for £100, went to university for free, retired at the age of 45. Yes, my friend, you deserve a lifetime of cruise ships ahead of you. Equity release. That's what the bank does to you. It's all about marketing. Like credit card debt is such a big problem now in this country. The government is forcing banks to provide customers with money management tools. And when you consult these money management tools, some of them are actually quite horrible. You go on the bank's website, money management tool, let me see what they... Let's check this out. And it says, are you thinking of purchasing something? Have you considered not purchasing it instead? Or maybe purchase it in a smaller quantity or less frequently? Of course, the bank doesn't teach you money management. The bank has an interest to charge you interest. That is literally a conflict of interest. Thank you. Your bank, please laugh quickly, my set is short. Your bank teaching you money management is like your favorite restaurant teaching you farming. Or like your local abortion clinic teaching you responsibility. Yes, the night has a theme. I've learned that Edinburgh Fringe Festival looks favorably on comedians who have a common theme in the whole throughout the set. Yeah, but that's what the banks do. And of course, in America, you have pro-choice and pro-life, right? So it's all about catchy names. So you go to these guys, hey, you are pro-life, right? Like, what's this all about? Yeah, we are pro-life, so we want the baby to live. So you mean the mother dies? No, the mother doesn't die. We are pro-life. The father dies? Nobody dies. We are pro-life, okay? Got it? It seems very reasonable. Thank you. Let me check out these other guys as well. I'll come back to you. But I'm on to you guys. Huh? So you guys, you are pro-choice. Whose choice is this? The mother's choice, of course. What about the baby? The baby doesn't get a choice. And the father? The father doesn't get a choice either. All right. Now, this choice you keep bringing up, what is this really? Oh, I'm glad you asked. The choice is that of chopping the limbs of the baby one by one and then suctioning the whole thing out with a vacuuming device. Oh my God! I think, excuse me. I think I'm going with these guys. And I thought the worst thing you can do to your kids is equity release. I wish I could do this in my country of birth, Italy, but Italians are less into killing their babies. And also we have a bigger problem. In Italy we don't have stand-up because the weather is nice outside. So I love it here because the British have the best sense of humor, you know. When you think about it, I know Radu was talking about it earlier. It's true, you have the best sense of humor because if my country also had won both world wars and was still smaller and poorer than Germany, I would want to have a bloody good laugh about it as well. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight here we made history. You've just seen the world's only pro-life stand-up act, which means you have just seen the world's funniest pro-life stand-up act. So, if nothing else works out for you in your lives, nobody can take this from you tonight. It's so easy to be on top of your field as a right-wing comedian when the field is very much a desert, right? People say you are so brave. I'm just lazy. Anyways, you've been a wonderful audience. I have been the funniest Italian Iranian comic you've ever seen. Thank you very much. Take care.
Told you. I promised that you would laugh and you would enjoy. And that's why this gentleman is on the program. So thank you so much. I love the pro-life stuff. I love, it's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. When you're talking about butchering babies and finding funny in that, dude, that's what comedy is when it's done well. So I have to go here before we go a little bit further. Your worldview colors how you see the world and how you deliver your comedy from your perspective. So I need to know, so tell me where you're coming from. What is your philosophy? How do you see the world? What's the meaning of life? Where are you coming from?
Thank you. Now, if I may actually link this to what we were saying before playing the clip. You said sometimes people say you are not funny, and that's fair. It's subjective, it's their prerogative. In fact, what I love about stand-up is that as an artist, if you consider it as a form of art,
Sure.
or at least a form of craft, you are, as a comedian, subject to the immediate judgment of your audience. The verdict is immediate, and that's what makes it so exciting for me, and also so fair and so democratic. So if you think I'm not funny, and I may not be funny, at least to some people, that's fine, because I already know that. But why do you go on and try to cancel me?
Yeah.
And to try to, stop me from being able to put bread on the table if I'm a full-time professional comedian? And that's what they have done repeatedly in the US and in the UK. Now, funny that we were talking about the pro-life comedy, because this pro-life set has been so far the most successful set I've done in terms of the publicity and in terms of views. As I'm talking to you, it has had about 880,000 or 860,000 views on YouTube. Um, uh, it got me some media attention. Trigonometry, which is probably the most successful or one of the most famous podcasts in the UK. Former Donald Trump advisor, Sebastian Gorka, interviewed me on his TV show, America First. And I argue that this is the only pro-life, entirely pro-life comedy routine in the world. I might be wrong. I haven't seen anything to the contrary. In fact, there is this website, this publication called American Mind, where they ran a feature called The Untellable Joke. I think that was the title of the article. And they compared pro-life and pro-choice, if you like, material by comics such as the likes of Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, and the writer concludes that all of these A-listers, undoubtedly successful comics, they do a bit of pro-life, they do a bit of pro-choice, but their pro-life is their pro-life bits or material is rather a way of doing some provocation, maybe going off the beaten track, a bit of shock, and then they always come back and land on, ladies, ultimately it's your choice. Yeah. And then he mentions me, and he says, although he's not maybe in terms of delivery as developed as these giants, he's the only one who has had an attempt at only pro-life, entirely pro-life. It's not about, and I was obviously flattered to be mentioned in the same breath, in the same article, next to the likes of Bill Burr and Louis C.K. and Dave Chappelle. Now, why am I telling you this? When I started, it was my first year, maybe 2017 or 2018. I got cancelled from one of my favorite open mics in North London, where I live, because I did a couple of pro-life jokes. And the promoter, who had liked me up until that moment, told me, I don't mind conservative comedy, but you were not funny. And I thought, okay, I'm not supposed to be funny. This is open mic, and that's why you are not paying me.
Right.
I mean, although you are selling tickets, and now you're banning me indefinitely because I was not funny. This is the double standard, right? Because do you think literally every other lefty comic who comes on, and I'm talking about 2017, as I said, talks about Trump's funny hair or Trump's small hand or Trump's wife being a gold digger and Brexiteers being racist and, do you think these guys are funny? Of course they are not funny. I can say the same thing, and they do these hackneyed cliche jokes all the time, but you have double standards because I'm supposed to be funny, and even if I'm not funny, you cancel me from an open mic. Now, ironically, this year in 2023, the Chortle website, which is arguably the biggest website that deals with stand-up comedy in the UK, in their awards ceremony or in their award list, they rewarded this same promoter as being one of the most supportive venue, and he cancelled me in 2017. So what I'm telling you is that sometimes you are called to embrace the arms. You're called onto the war because it is a culture war. Now, I've always had my views. I was always conservative, even as a student. When I was in Italy, in a city called Bologna, the stronghold of the Communist Party, the biggest Communist Party in Western Europe, of course, was in Italy, and their birthplace was in Bologna. So I had a tough time, obviously, as you can imagine. So I was always who I was in terms of my worldview. But then you see the necessity to do even more of to dedicate more of your comedy to your conservative or right-wing views, because nobody else is doing it. And of course, I joke about it, and it is funny, but it's also true. I say, whenever there's a London gig, I say, okay, thank you very much. You've been a lovely audience. I was the funniest right-wing comic of the lineup. And that is almost always true. I say, I was the funniest right-wing comic you've seen all month. And that is almost always true. So the downside is it makes life very difficult for me in terms of getting the stage time and not getting canceled and dealing with that. But the upside is people hardly forget me once they see me, and you think you're also doing a service to the society. I don't want to sound arrogant or anything, but if I don't do it, who else is going to do it? Because every other comic is about, yeah, there is a gender pay gap, there isn't, and we need more immigration, and Trump is so silly, and all that. And of course you get a lot of negative comments, but the best comments are the ones where people from all over the world, from the US, from Australia, from India, they say, oh, thanks for saying this, because nobody else is saying this.
Yeah.
And we wish more people were doing this like you. And again, another kind of favorite comment is when somebody tells me, I'm actually pro-choice, or I'm more leaning towards pro-choice, but I found your routine funny. And I think it's important that also this point of view is raised, because ultimately it should be about, different comics doing their things, and then you decide for yourself, and hopefully it will be funny and not just preachy.
Well, but again, not only was the pro-life, and you're talking about abortion, I mean, so if that's what they meant by the untellable joke, and I think it was Carlin that said, no topic is off limits as long as you can find the funny in it, which is our gift. You said earlier, I don't know if this is an art or it is. Well, it is. It's a performance art. It's no different than stage play or a monologue or a Cirque du Soleil. I mean, it's a way of communicating an idea to folks that they are inspired by in some way or another, or moved by, or made uncomfortable by. But comedy can do that the best.
It's certainly more art than sticking a banana to the wall of a museum.
You'd think. And then we take it off and slip on the peel. That's what we do, because we're the comic. We find the funny in it. But you also, you took on Islam. It's like, and you're in a part of the world where that can have existential consequences. You even brought up France, of course, and Charlie, am I mispronouncing that? The cartoonist and the tragedy that took place there. So you really, this idea of, the religion of peace, and well, it's Pat and Penny. It was just great. It was a wonderful, wonderful idea, and wonderful juxtapositioning of all the clearly antithetical behavior that doesn't seem to indicate what one would call a religion of peace. But then again, in the U.S. during the Black Lives Matter protest, we got to redefine what a peaceful protest was, and that is one that includes riots and burning down buildings and beating people over the head with bicycle locks, or, as we like to say, peaceful protest. So that whole manipulation of words is really the power of the left. They don't have the power, I don't think, in the numbers. I can't speak for Europe. I have to think. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know you guys. I'm not from there. I only know the U.S. perspective, and it can be fairly myopic, but there has to be folks in England who say, I want my country to remain. I want us to be free. I want to be British, and that's okay. I don't care if you come over here. Maybe you don't have exactly the same. I'm not sure how you integrate different points of view within a culture, because we have the Constitution, we have the Declaration of Independence, we have these certain documents that that creedal documents that created and crafted a perspective that was expected of you to become one of us. So England maybe doesn't have obviously predates the U.S. by quite some time. But you do have documents, older documents, that created what it meant to be a free man in England. Some of the first documents that allowed the king to be put under the same parameters as the non-monarchy, as far as what he was allowed to do and not to do. So, is there a sense in your mind of, and I don't know if you consider yourself English now, if you consider yourself more Iranian, Italian, I don't know, but you're in Europe. So is there a sense of folks that just feel unheard, unrecognized, and almost being overwhelmed with being unable to even defend their own culture and its own perspective? Is that something that's fairly bubbling up in there, and they just, and is there any shot that there would be a true revolution of saying we're not going to allow our country simply to be destroyed on our watch? I mean, I don't know. What's the tone over there?
I'd say it's pretty much similar to the US. Obviously, I haven't been to the US a lot of times, but I follow many commentators and I follow the news for obvious reasons. And I'd say it is true in the UK or in Europe, we don't have the First Amendment. That is a big that is a shame. So our freedom of speech and freedom of expression is not maybe as robust or as protected. That's why all over Europe, not just in Britain, legislators come up with all these so-called hate speech laws, which put a chokehold on people's rights. In Scotland, which is an autonomous part of Great Britain, a country within Great Britain, they have come up with some very draconian free speech laws, actually. So you know what is happening to Jordan Peterson in Canada. So this is pretty much a common theme in the West. Thankfully, the U.S. is the only one is the one with the First Amendment. I wish we had something similar. The majority of the people, I would say, are still sane. The majority of the people have common sense. When you see, for example, with Brexit, of course, the question of European Union was complicated, and I don't want to get into that. But one component of that, sorry about the interruption. One component of that was a sense of identity, a sense of nation state, as opposed to this faceless, beige, borderless, internationalist entity, globalist entity that is the European Union. Of course, nobody's more European than me. I was born in Rome, so I'm not the typical, Brit. The lefty mainstream media depict as racist people who hate France and who hate Germany, and that's all nonsense. My wife is a Germanic person. I was born in Rome. I studied French. I studied Dutch. I did a student exchange program in the Netherlands. I lived in Germany for a year. So we love Europe. We love the nations of Europe, and that's why we supported Brexit, because we want to have our identities rather than becoming faceless, genderless, stateless, mass of consumers for the global corporations and the global governance that they're pushing for. Now, having said that, we don't have a voice, pretty much like the Americans. The American conservatives don't have a voice. They thought they had Fox News, but look what happened to Tucker Carlson. So what we have right now is these platforms, for example, where you and I are talking, and that's why they're also going after these. So they're pressing, ever since Trump got elected, they went after Facebook because they thought Facebook got Trump elected, talk about lack of self-awareness, and Twitter, other social media platforms. So we need to keep up the fight, and if we don't have the mainstream media, which we don't, we need to go for these platforms. And if they take away these platforms from us, as they do, demonetizing you on YouTube, shadow banning you, and everything that I'm sure you and your viewers are familiar with, we need to come up with alternative platforms. This is a war, and it's about our existence, and it's about our freedom. So what else can we do? And I think we will eventually prevail. But even if we don't, we cannot basically live with ourselves if we go down without a fight.
Amen. Amen. Why are you a conservative?
Pardon me?
Why are you a conservative?
Why am I a conservative? Well, to some extent, I think it just makes sense. If you believe that you are an individual who was created in God's image, as we read in the Bible, you deserve respect. And if God created you in your own image, don't you think you should have some degree of autonomy without the need to follow the guidelines or the diktats of a big government who decides for you? Especially when that big government even doesn't speak your language or doesn't share your roots and your values. It's going to be a global government, as I was just saying. And I think that is, I think, the logical aspect of it. And also, everybody has beliefs that to some extent come from their values, their history. I was born in Italy, but to Iranian parents. So I spent a few years in the Islamic Republic, where I experienced that sort of theocracy and that sort of big government and that sort of pervasive ideology, anti-Western, illiberal, anti-individual ideology. And then I went back to my country of birth, Italy, this time to study in Bologna, the leftist stronghold. So it wasn't a communist state, but it was a lefty ideology. And of course, you can imagine what universities are like. So I've seen this sort of totalitarian or dictatorial worldview, where they just want to crush you for the sake of the common good. And of course, the common good is all of us becoming faceless people without an identity, so they can exploit us better. And I think part of my conservative inclination is a reaction to that, because I think the West and its Christian roots are worth preserving.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to me, it looks so obvious. Because look at everything we have. Look at the prosperity. Look at the freedom. Look at the world we live in. And where does this come from? Does it come from leftism, or does it come from Islam? No, it comes from the Western identity, and the Western identity and human rights, which has its roots in Christianity. Because so many of these lefties come and say that, oh, Europe was in the Dark Ages because of Christianity, and then they let go of Christianity. No, Europe was in the Dark Ages because they let go of Christianity. Because Jesus Christ was not about burning books or stoning people to death. You know, Jesus said, "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and give to God what belongs to God." That is the separation of state and religion. So that was Jesus. Did Jesus conduct any holy wars? No, Jesus said, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." That is rule of law, you know, the correct procedure, rather than, you know, summary trials and lynching. And exactly, we had reform in Christianity because the reformists went to the Pope of their time and said, look, what you are doing has nothing to do with Jesus. Now we are going to leave the Catholic Church as it is now and take half Christendom with us. And that's what they did. And the human rights and the Declaration of Human Rights, who wrote these? These are all Western Christian white dudes, the demonized middle-aged white men, right?
Right.
And the foundation for human rights is that because man was created in God's image and likeness, he deserves respect and he deserves rights. It didn't happen automatically. It wasn't just they were suddenly hit with a lightning and say, oh, let's do. It's no coincidence that the Christian civilization created human rights. And I think
So,
this is all worth fighting for.
oh, amen. Well, so are you, so when you speak of these ideas of the Judeo-Christian ethic, philosophy that created the West as we know it, do you speak of that philosophically, that Christendom and Christian moral undergirdings is what created the West, like Jordan Peterson would, who's a respecter of it? Or are you an actual believer? Are you a Christian? I'm just curious about your religious belief, if any.
Well, I am a believer. I haven't been baptized, so I'm not technically maybe in the crowd. I have baptized. I've christened my daughters.
Yeah.
My wife is a Catholic. My daughters. My first one goes to a Catholic school. The second one is too young. And I think that's very important. We have a lot of Christians in the West who may not be practicing Christians,
Yes.
but they are all still cultural Christians. They
everybody.
believe in the values, and they acknowledge that, okay, maybe they don't eat fish on Fridays, or the so-called lapsed Catholic or lapsed Christian, whatever you want to call them. But these are people who are reasonable people who acknowledge what I was just saying, the legacy that we have and the heritage that we have, and the value system that we have, and especially nowadays with all these LGBT propaganda and ideology and drag queen storytelling time for kids in the nurseries and kindergartens. You come across people who say, look, maybe I'm not going to church every week, or maybe I'm not an observing or a practicing Christian, but we need to have some value, and we need to have some direction, and we need to have some common heritage and identity, because maybe until 20, 30 years ago, and this was the argument of the so-called humanists, right? People like Richard Dawkins, not murder people. Aren't you good inherently? Okay, that makes some sense. Okay, maybe you're right. But look where we are now. We are chopping off little kids' penises, or giving them puberty blockers. Changing to we've ended up with 52 genders and 65 sexual orientations. We demonize our own past, which has given us all this prosperity, freedom, and well-being, worshipping alternatives who have created nothing but misery and genocide and poverty, all in the name of diversity. If diversity is so good, why didn't it work in the Soviet Union or in Yugoslavia or in Portland?
Well, and it can't, because there's a difference between having different points of view and finding a continuity that allows your culture to function. The United States has on its coins e pluribus unum, and you speak a lot of language, that's Latin, out of many one. So the idea was not that we are multicultural. We're not. We have different cultures and ethnicities that have come together. But if they don't lay aside their cultural history, not to diminish it or not to not respect it. Of course, the United States is the most eclectic gathering of different ethnicities and groups and histories, probably than any country in human history. But it didn't work because of that. It worked because they brought the best of their culture, older, more unique, had more perspectives to us. And then they said, but now I'm going to learn your language. I'm going to respect your borders. I'm going to learn your cultures. I'm going to become one of you. And that's the only way it could have worked. Now, you talked about your, Christianity. All truth is God's truth. So I don't care if an atheist says it. I don't care if a Muslim says it. I don't care if a polytheist. It doesn't matter. If it's true, it's God's. I think mathematics is the language of God. I think that's how he is able to cross all cultures, because mathematics has no particular ethnic background. I think that's how he communicates to us in some degree. I am a Christian, full blown. I think you are too, clearly, which makes me grateful, because then we're on the same family, the same team. And it's important, because we will not survive as a world if the last truth tellers on earth are eliminated. And we're the only sort of cultures left that will, or at least could have the potential to stand up against China or any totalitarian regime that decides to overtake us. But they're winning, I think, in many respects. Deviously. I didn't see it coming through social media. I didn't know it was going to come through TikTok. I didn't know it was going to come through, different ways that I couldn't have anticipated to control the narrative. I always say, whoever controls the words controls the people, because your words indicate how you think is how you behave, and how you behave, of course, is your character, and who that is who you actually are. You'll be known by your fruit. So people can see who you are, how you behave. If you allow the government to tell you, I want 3 masks, 15 vaccines, laminate your lungs, stay inside, seal your windows, and you do it, not only are you a slave, you're the worst type of slave, because you walked to the slave master, handed him your chains, and said, please put these around me and begin to lead me around. You've given away your liberties, which is a whole more evil, broken way to see the world than having them stripped away by someone who just overpowered you. And that's what I saw during Corona. It was people giving. Now, again, I'm speaking from the U.S. perspective, because we had a different presupposition. Yeah, our founding fathers said, we find these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, amongst which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the idea of the Judeo-Christian construct that we are intrinsically valuable, not instrumentally valuable, which is what we get from all leftism. They see us as products. It changed everything, changed the world. It gave us autonomy that never existed. The idea that slavery is wrong never existed in a culture. It was like, of course they're slaves. That's how the game works. Some people sit on couches and eat grapes and intellectualize at Mars Hill as Greeks, and others go out and work the fields and give us our share. There was no idea of intrinsic value. There was nobody was picking up children off the side of the road in Rome when they would be left to exposure because there was no intrinsic value. Only Christians did that. We walked into the villages during the Black Plague when people were suffering, because we said that some things in life are more important than life. We were the ones. Our heritage said that there is a grander purpose in life, a transcendent purpose that permeates to who we become as humans. And if you become that person, that humbled person, you'll know God, and you'll know your Creator, and you will have eternal life. And while we're down here, we're just passing out some crumbs and saying, follow us. I think we figured out how to get home. Listen, brother, I really appreciated talking to you. I hope that we can stay in touch. I mean, just maybe we could do something together here in the U.S. I would love to try to get you somewhere up on stage or something we could do together. I don't know what it would look like exactly, but I just feel like we're at a time in history where when you reach a like-minded person, there's a real deep bonding, because you realize all we got's each other, man. It's a peasants' revolt because we've been abandoned by the government. This World Economic Forum is legit. This idea of trying to destroy and control the world through oligarchs is really true. And as a Christian, it's the first time in history that we actually could see the potential for one world government, revelation, as though we're in the final chapter, like it's really happening. And I ain't no conspiracy theorist. But when I see things happening that have never happened before, unprecedentedly, you got to go, what is going on? So thank you for your courage, man. Thank you for, speaking out, doing the things you did.
Thank
People,
you.
yeah, people have said the same thing to me, over the years, like, oh, thank you for saying the things you say, or, oh, you say the things we want to say. And I always say the same thing to them. I said, look, thanks. I'm glad you appreciate it. Go forth and do likewise. This has no value if all I did was make you feel good about yourself. If you're not doing it in your sphere of influence, we can't survive. You're responsible too for where you're at, your workplace, your friends, your neighbors, your family. It has to be truth-telling at all times, all places. Never apologize, and bring these tyrants to their knees. Put a line in the sand and say, nope, this will go no further. I don't know if we're going to pull it off. I believe God could give us another great awakening, but boy, we got a lot of repenting to do. So, but anyways, thank you so much, Nicholas De Santo. I can't wait to see more of your material. And like I said, maybe, just maybe, you and I can do something together at a live event one of these days.
Likewise. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. Let's keep in touch and see what happens. Thank you, Brad.
Absolutely. And when you're in Nashville, make sure and you look me up. So, folks, as you know, I try to bring folks on that are interesting, that have a point of view, and that are important and courageous, because we cannot survive, folks. We cannot survive if we don't rise up and become one and fight back because I still think we have the numbers. I still think we have the ideas, but we have to find a way to mobilize. And it's hard to do when they control the way to communicate. But hey, God's sovereign, and we're still here. As you know, and as I taught you, political correctness, cultural Marxism is evil. Political correctness must die. PC free is liberty. If somebody ever says you're politically incorrect, always tell them thank you for the compliment. And keep in mind that we're still free. So let's hang on as long as we can. This is God's Comic Brad Stine, and all I'm doing is putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.